Charles Leclerc had a chance to take 19 points out of Max Verstappen's championship lead at the British Grand Prix, but in the end he only ended up gaining 6 after falling back to 4th after the late safety car, having been in the lead when the race was neutralised. That's put scrutiny on Ferrari's tactics, scrutiny that team boss Mattia Binotto did not appreciate on Sunday night at Silverstone, especially given Ferrari still won the race with Carlos Sainz. But to help me, Glenn Freeman, work out if Ferrari did get this horribly wrong in terms of the championship, are Ed Straw and Scott Mitchell, who are at Silverstone this weekend. Scott, we'll come to you first. You're talking to us from your hotel room, as we can see. Does Binotto's attempted defence, and it was a fierce defence of what Ferrari did in the latter stages of this race, does that hold up, or did Ferrari blow a big opportunity here?
I think Ferrari did mismanage this and wasted a very good chance on a day that was very bad for Red Bull and Max Verstappen in particular. Mattia Binotto seemed to be asking the rhetorical question of, well, what would critics have done differently? I'm sure if he has a burner Twitter account, I'm pretty sure he could find plenty of suggestions of what they could have done differently. I wanted to give Ferrari the benefit of the doubt with their strategy choice initially, because it is always very, very hard when you have a car and driver in the lead of the race to forfeit track position. I do understand that, and a lot of the time track position is 9/10 of the law in Formula One. So I did appreciate that. And there did seem to be an initial desire to enforce team orders and get Carlos Sainz on having switched to the softs to play the rear gunner to Leclerc when the race restarted. There was an element of logic to that, and it did seem like Ferrari would actually finally be able to implement some team orders with a bit of steeliness. I won't get bogged down too much in what happened earlier in the race, but Ferrari has never been particularly effective with team orders, and so it proved again here when Carlos basically went rogue and said, do not ask me to do this, when asked to drop back 10 car lengths at the safety car restart to try to protect Leclerc. So Ferrari, I wanted to see the logic in it, but it was ultimately just fatally flawed. With Leclerc being in the lead of the race and the championship, you needed to prioritise him, and while Ferrari can try and claim some consolation in that they did win the race and that Leclerc did take points off Verstappen, he still finished off the podium, which was poor. And I think if they'd pit both cars under the safety car, or if they just pit if they just pit Leclerc and left Sainz out, then I think they would have won the race anyway, and they probably would have had the second car on the podium. So I really do feel like this was poorly managed by Ferrari, and another example of the fact that just strategically, operationally, this team isn't really a title contending team at the moment.
No, it just seemed a way to guarantee that Leclerc would be the one that was the sitting duck on the restart. Now, Ed, Scott made passing mention there of Ferrari and team orders. I think we should stress that it's modern day Ferrari that can't execute team orders well. Ferrari used to be ruthlessly efficient with its team orders. But we've seen this before in recent years, haven't we? Does Ferrari just freeze in these situations where it has to make a big call like this?
It's curious. There's almost a desire to get the outcome you want without intervening. Like they hope the problem will solve itself, because if you've got a quicker driver behind a slower driver, there's a possibility that might happen. But from quite early in this race, that phase when Leclerc was clearly quicker and behind Sainz, and Hamilton was just chipping away, bringing that gap down, I thought they should have intervened. But they were talking about it. They were giving Sainz a target lap time, which he would then be 4/10 off, and they tell him it was good pace. And it was all just a little bit odd, like they didn't want to get involved. You mentioned the history of Ferrari, and I wonder if almost it's the scars of Austria 2002 and Hockenheim 2010 that makes them not want to be seen to be instigating these team orders. I think there's a little bit of that, and a little bit of losing that ruthlessness they once have. They haven't won a championship for a long time, and it's almost like they've forgotten the way to do it. There was a reason why team orders were used by Ferrari very successfully in the past, and there will be again. Leclerc is the title shot, Sainz isn't. So I think throughout this race, we saw multiple occasions, not least that point when they were within Hamilton's pit window, but close to falling out of it, and they were given permission to race and cost each other time. Just decisions that don't optimise their race. It's all about optimising the team race, maximising the result, keeping the race time down as low as possible. Ferrari has got to get sharper at that, and being flat-footed and paralysed by fear, but they almost can't do right for fear of doing wrong, is not the way to do that.
No, and they're up against an opponent in Red Bull that has put its cards on the table several times in that regard. Max Verstappen is the priority there, although Sergio Perez is doing a great job. But lastly, we'll come to you first, Scott. Leclerc got that ticking off. It looked like a ticking off. It must have been a ticking off from Binotto in Parc Ferme to make sure he didn't say perhaps what he really felt to the media and to you guys at the track. What he did say was that he hasn't lost faith in the team, but this was such a big chance blown. So can he really trust Ferrari to help him win this championship?
No, I don't think he can. I don't think there's any evidence from the last 6 Grand Prix, really, that Ferrari is a title contending operation now. And Leclerc must be second-guessing everything at the moment. Strategic calls, reliability. This isn't a team that really looks razor sharp. It looks like a team that they spent a couple of years not winning, but before that they were ostensibly in title fights. They were trying to mount championship campaigns. We're not talking about an organisation that's had 10 or 15 years away from the top and needs to learn how to win again. Ferrari should know this. It's a bit silly at this point. And I can tell that Leclerc's attitude is shifting. He is saying the right things insofar as not wanting to say he has lost trust in the team, says he still has faith, says he still believes in them, says he still has confidence, knows that the package is fast, all of that. But the body language it's betraying him at times, because ultimately he's just having disappointment after disappointment, and so much of it is self-inflicted. I just don't see how a top driver who knows that he is performing at a level required to fight for the World Championship this year can really reflect on the last few races and think, yeah, I absolutely believe my team can match my ability and we can fight for this World Championship together.
The trouble is that ultimately Leclerc, it's not a question of whether he can or can't. He has to trust Ferrari. There is a good car there. The team needs to sharpen up. And I think Leclerc also needs to think about ways to try and make sure he feeds into the process. We saw Carlos Sainz when he was instructed to drop 10 car lengths back for the restart, saying, I don't think that's a very good idea. Taking control of the situation, making sure it played out the way he wanted it to. Leclerc, I think, needs to have that in mind, not necessarily specifically for what happened at Silverstone, but take Monaco when he pitted and he kind of assumed that he'd go straight from wets to slicks, but he didn't when he was told to box. Just say, right, this is for slicks, isn't it? Just to make absolutely sure. So it doesn't mean it's Leclerc's fault, but I think that's an area of his game where he needs to make sure he asserts himself as much as possible. But as I say, Ferrari's the only team, the only car it's got this year. It's got the pace, so he needs to trust them, and he needs to find a way to build up that trust with the team and build up the team so that they make the right decisions.